Okay, we're looking at LSAT 63. This is Logic Game 1, June of 2011. Each of 7 candidates for the position of judge, H, J, K, L, M, O, and P, will be appointed to an open position on one of 2 courts, the appellate court or the trial court. So we have the appellate court or the trial court. There are 3 open positions on the appellate court and 6 open positions on the trial court. So A equals 3, T equals 6. Not all of them will be filled at this time. Okay, so what we know is we have a total of 7 potential candidates, and we have actually 9 spaces. Right now we know that there are 2 groups. Okay, it's the appellate court with 3 spots, and then the trial court with 6 spots. Okay, so right now we have too many spaces and not enough variables. We know that each one of these variables are going to go, so as of right now we know that there are going to be 2 empty spaces. So we know we've got 2 groups. We should automatically be thinking about whether or not there will be any sequential aspects to this game. In other words, will there be some inherent order of the candidates when they go in A or T, or does A elect before T, things of that nature. We suspect that it's not the case, and actually in this logic game it's not. We're just dealing with the grouping game, but again, you always want to kind of go down these checklists to try to determine what's exactly happening in the game. You're always trying to predict what's happening, and then when you go through the rules, it's it either confirms or denies what you're thinking. Okay, let's go on. The judicial appointments will conform to the following conditions. L must be appointed to A, and K must be appointed to T, and then H and P cannot occur with one another. Okay, so we want to utilize the hierarchy of rules to solve the scenarios, and we're given 2 first-order rules. Recall that first-order rules just say, hey, something goes in a specific place. Anytime we get something like that, that's obviously the first thing we're going to place, and so we're going to place L here. Oops. We're going to place L in the A group and K in the T group. So we've exhausted these rules. We've also shown these 2 rules that were in the stimulus up top here. And now we're just dealing with H and P. We know that they have to occur, but that they can't occur together. So there's 2 things that can happen, H and P, and then okay. And we have exhausted all the rules. It would be somewhat redundant. We're basically left with J, M, and O. I mean, we could open this up and you could put a J here, an M here, or an O here, or nothing there, and that would basically create a total of 4 additional scenarios. And you could really solve this entire game out in a total of 8 scenarios, but somewhat redundant. We know that J, M, or O are left over, and they can go anywhere. They have no constraints to them. The only constraint that we're going to face in this game is that there's 1 space available. And so this is the type of logic game, and it's very simple in that there are only 2 groups, but it's going to continually ask us, it's going to try to place 2 of these variables in one of these spots. Typically you get games like this where there are 3 groups, and it's a little bit more of a hide the ball type situation, but nonetheless, we should expect this sort of thing to go on all day long, trying to get 2 of 3 in a space where there's only 1. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the questions. Which one of the following is an acceptable set of appointments of candidates to courts? So we're in what's called an elimination question, and what we want to do is we want to apply each of the rules and to the answer choices, and the answer choice that violates the rule is obviously excluded, and the last answer choice standing is the correct answer to the question. So if we look at the first rule, we have L must be appointed to the appellate court, and if you look at A, L is appointed actually to the trial court, so A drops out. If we look at the second rule, K must be appointed to the trial court. If you look at C, K is actually appointed to the appellate court. Okay? And then if you look at the third rule, we have that H and P cannot occur together. And if you look at B, we have H and P occurring in the appellate court, so B's out. And then also, if you look at D, we have H and P occurring in the trial court, so D falls out. As such, the correct answer to the question is E. Okay, second question, which one of the following cannot be true? And you should automatically know the only thing that cannot be true in this logic game, other than rules that would just directly putting H and P together. I mean, from this right here, J, M, and O could all go in the trial court, but only one of J, M, and O can occur in the appellate court. So let's look at A. H and M are appointed to the appellate court. Well, sure, that can happen here. Let's number these. In the first scenario, we could have H and M in the appellate court. So since that could be true, that's not the answer to the question. Again, we're looking for what cannot be true. Let's look at B. M and O are both appointed to the appellate court. That cannot be true. That's the game that we're talking about. We're playing this game over and over in this logic game. So B is the correct answer to the question because that cannot be true. Let's look at C, though. O and P are both appointed to the appellate court. That could be true in the second scenario. We already have P, and one of the three can go, so that could be true. As such, it's not the answer to the question. Let's look at D. H and J are appointed to the trial court. Well, sure, in the second scenario, H and J could be appointed here. And then E, O, and P are both appointed to the trial court. Well, in the first scenario, we have P, and we could place an O over in the trial court. Because that could be true, that is not the answer to the question. Again, B is the only answer choice that cannot be true, and that is the question. And the reason why I always emphasize what cannot be true, could be true, is that's the way you need to be thinking about it as you go through. I mean, oftentimes people will actually know the correct answer to the question, but forget what the question is. So the way that I'm speaking this, I'm hoping that you're thinking this through in your mind in the exact same manner. Okay, let's look at 3. Which one of the following cannot be true? J and M are appointed to the appellate court. Same game. This time it's J and M. They could never go to the appellate court because these are two variables with only one spot. Since that cannot be true, A is the answer to the question. Let's look at B. J and M are appointed to the trial court. Well, we have plenty of spaces for J and M to occur in the trial court, so since that could be true, that cannot be the answer to the question. Let's look at C. M and O are both appointed to the trial court. Same situation, that could be true. As such, that's not the answer to the question. Let's look at D. M and P are both appointed to the appellate court. Sure, in the second scenario, since there's a P, we could place an M. That could be true. That's not the answer to the question because we're being asked what cannot be true. And then E. M and P are appointed to the trial court. It can happen in scenario 1. We could have an M and P there. Again, since that could be true, that is not the answer to the question. We're asked to find the answer choice that cannot be true, and we've proven that A is the only one of the answer choices that cannot be true. As such, that is the correct answer to the question. Let's look at 4. If O is appointed to the appellate court, which one of the following must be true? Okay, so what I want to do is just go ahead and place O. Okay, if I just want to exhaust what can happen. Okay, that's all that can happen. If I place O in the appellate court, then that means that J and M would both end up in the trial court. These are the only two things that could happen. And again, don't be afraid to flesh this out. You would never want to work from here. You'd want to just work it right down here, just bring it down. And so let's see what it asks. Which one of the following must be true if O is appointed to the appellate court? Again, we have 2 scenarios. I just made both of them very quickly, and let's see what can happen. A, H is appointed to the appellate court. Well, that doesn't have to be true because H could be in the trial court in this scenario. B, J is appointed to the appellate court. That cannot be true. We know that J would have to occur in the trial court. C, J is appointed to the trial court. Absolutely, that must be true. It happens in both scenarios. Again, on a must be true question, it has to happen in every single scenario. It does in this case, so C is the correct answer to the question. Let's look at D. P is appointed to the appellate court. Again, P could be in the trial court, so that doesn't have to be true. As such, it is not the answer to the question. And then E. P is appointed to the trial court. I think I had P in the appellate. P could occur in either the appellate or the trial court, which eliminates both answer choices, D and E. As such, C is the only question that absolutely must be true. Okay, let's look at 5. Which one of the following is substituted for the condition that H cannot be appointed to the same court as P. So we have now eliminated this rule. Would have the same effect on the appointment of the 7 candidates. So as of right now, the only thing that we know in this game is, let's just go ahead and express it right down here. We just know this, because we no longer have the rule that H and P have to be separate from one another. So let's look at the first answer choice. A, H and P cannot both be appointed to the appellate court. So what we have is H and P cannot, H cannot equal P on the appellate court. The problem with this question, the problem with this answer choice, is it never says that H and P cannot be on the trial court together. All right, so I'm left with J, M, and O. I could fill it in whichever way I wanted. As such, this answer choice does not have the same effect of making sure that H and P have to be separate. They only have to be separate with regard to the appellate court. Okay, so both of them can't be on the appellate court, but one of them, but both of them could be on the trial court. That answer choice does not foreclose on that possibility. As such, it does not have the same effect as this rule. Let's look at B. If H is not appointed to the trial court, then P must be. So what that really means is if H, because we only have 2 groups, if H is appointed to the appellate court, then P must be appointed to the trial court, okay? So the contrapositive of this is if P is appointed to the appellate court, then H must be appointed to the trial court. Well, these rules have the same effect as one another. Again, if H is A, then P must be T, but we don't ever discuss if H is on the trial court. If H is on the trial court, anything can happen. We can say basically P can be on the trial court or P can be on the appellate court. This rule is just like A and B are the same thing. They don't foreclose on the possibility of this happening. As such, they do not have the same effect as that rule. Let's go ahead and take a look at C. If P is appointed to the same court as J, so if we have P and J appointed to the same court as one another, then H cannot be appointed to that court. Okay? So the bottom line with this rule, okay, is it says if we have both P and J together, then H can't be with. Okay? But there's no rule that says if P is alone, then H cannot occur with P. So in this rule, if we just wanted to look at it a little bit more in detail, if we had the L and the K here, it would be true that if we had P and J right here, then that would mean that H would have to absolutely occur on the other side. But there's nothing that says that if there's just P, okay, and let's separate J out, we don't have P and J together, therefore H could be there. So since we could have P and H together again on the trial court, it doesn't foreclose of what's happening with H not being able to occur with P. One of the things you should recognize with this rule is it really has the same effect as A and B. It makes it to where P and H, actually I take that back. There's nothing that says that if P was here and we kept J separate, that H couldn't occur here either. So it's a little bit different, but all the rule really tells us is that if P and J are together, then H can't be there. But if P and J aren't together, there's nothing that forecloses on the idea that P and H can be together. Let's take a look at D. Okay, so this is C. Okay, D, if H is appointed to the same court as L, so if we have H and L together, then P and K must occur together. Then P and K. So, all right, so the bottom line with this rule is that if we place H and L together, then we must place P and K together. Okay, but what this rule again doesn't do is what if L and H are not together? Okay, if L and H are not together, so let's say I put H here, there's nothing that forecloses on the idea that P and H couldn't be together. Okay, so this this rule, if L is in the appellate group, okay, then P cannot be in the appellate group. That's basically what that rule says. And it also tells us if P is not with K, then H cannot be with L, which means that this has the same effect as A and B. It tells us that if P is not with K, so if I put P not with K over here, then I know for a fact that H cannot be with L, so I'd have to put H here. So this rule has the effect of both A and B. It's basically that P and H cannot occur in the appellate court together, but there's no rule that says that this can't happen right here. Okay? All right, so since that's the case, it doesn't foreclose on the opportunity for P and H to be together in the trial court. It doesn't have the same effect as H not being able to occur with P. Okay, let's look at the last rule, or the last question, the last answer choice. No 3 of H, K, L, and P. So H, K, L, and P, and no 3 of them can occur together. Okay, so no 3 of these 4 can occur together. Okay, so let's just kind of take a look at what we've got. We have already used up L and K. L and K are done. So as such, we're left with H and P. And because no 3 of 4, if I were to try to place H and P together, that would be 3. And it says that no 3 can be together. What it means is that no matter what happens, H and P have got to stay separate. We've got to keep this at 2 and 2. And since, again, we've used up L and K already, we can only use up P and H singularly in each group. Okay, that concludes LSAT 63 Logic Game 1, June of 2011.